Monster Unleashed, The Devastating Journey of Typhoon Podul. Prologue, Whispers over the Sea. In August, the western Pacific lay eerily still, the surface shimmering like a sheet of molten copper beneath the relentless sun. The air was thick, heavy with humidity, clinging to the skin like wet cloth. Out over this deceptively calm expanse of blue, a small and unremarkable swirl of clouds began to stir. At first, it was little more than wisps curling in the upper air. But fed by waters warmer than 86 degrees Fahrenheit, the spiral tightened, gathering strength with every passing hour. Within days, this humble cloud formation had swollen into a monstrous force of nature. Its cloud walls coiled tighter and tighter, as though a giant hand in the heavens was clenching into a fist. Meteorologists named it Podul, willow. But for those who would soon face it, that name would be forever etched into memory alongside fear, darkness, floodwaters, and desperate cries for survival. When the eye finally took shape, satellites captured a terrifying image, vast spiral arms sweeping across the ocean like the blades of a divine scythe. Wind speed surged toward 120 miles per hour. Any city standing in its path was about to be dragged into the abyss of the storm. Act 1, Taiwan's Long Night. On August 13th, Podul lunged at southern Taiwan. The night sky sagged under crushing clouds, suffocating the land beneath them. Rain fell in torrents, as if the heavens had overturned an endless bucket. It was like 1,000 hammers pounding on the roof at once, a resident of Tainan later recalled. The moment the storm made landfall, power poles snapped like twigs. Streets turned into raging brown rivers. Shopfront shutters were ripped off, their hinges. Motorcycles were hurled into the current like toy figurines. The destruction was immediate and overwhelming. At least 143 people were injured, entire neighborhoods plunged into darkness, hospitals surviving only on backup power. And worse still, Podul did not weaken after crossing Taiwan's central mountains, as so many storms before it had. Instead, it surged into the warm waters of the Taiwan Strait, regathering its strength and preparing for another strike. Act 2, Mainland on Edge. As Podul barreled toward mainland China, meteorological agencies issued the highest level warnings. Along the Fujian and Guangdong coasts, alarm sirens blared without pause. Fishermen scrambled to haul in their nets before dusk, while harbors filled with vessels chained tightly to the docks. "The sea will turn into our enemy soon enough," muttered a weathered old fisherman, his voice resigned. At 12:30 a.m., Podul slammed into Zhangpu, Fujian. The sound of the wind was like a chorus of wild beasts howling in the night. Roof tiles ripped away in sheets, billboards tore free and scythed across the streets like flying blades. It felt like an invisible monster was tearing the city apart, one witness said. In just hours, thousands of homes were damaged, entire fishing villages swallowed by the sea. Market stalls, scooters, furniture, everything was swept into the black water. Many residents fled barefoot, scrambling to higher ground with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Act 3, The Chain of Disasters. Podul's fury was not confined to its winds or its storm surge. It unleashed a cascade of disasters that spread like cracks through a fragile shell, each catastrophe feeding into the next. 1. Darkness descends. By midnight, millions of homes across Fujian and Guangdong were plunged into darkness. The hum of daily life ceased. Refrigerators, fans, and lamps fell silent. The only light came from rescue workers' flashlights slicing through the rain, and the occasional strobe of an ambulance siren bouncing across waterlogged streets. For families trapped inside their homes, the pitch-black night felt endless, broken only by the terrifying groans of the storm battering walls and rooftops. Two, mountains collapse. In the mountain counties of Yongchun and Huan, days of relentless rainfall had turned the earth into sludge. Entire hillsides, once firm and green, began to buckle under their own weight. With a thunderous roar, masses of mud and rock cascaded down, swallowing roads and cutting off entire villages. Some families awoke to the sound of walls shaking, only to find their homes moments away from being buried. Rescue teams, slowed by blocked roads and flooded valleys, struggled desperately to reach them. Three, floodwaters rising. In low-lying districts, water rose with terrifying speed. By dawn, many neighborhoods were submerged to waist height, with cars almost completely underwater. Residents waded through filthy brown torrents carrying children on their shoulders, clutching bags with the few belongings they could salvage. For the elderly and disabled, escape was nearly impossible. Inflatable boats, hastily deployed by fire brigades, became the only lifelines threading through drowned streets. Inside shelters, survivors sat drenched, clothes clinging to their skin, eyes vacant with exhaustion. Four, the assault on Guangdong. Farther south, in Guangdong, rainfall pounded the province with unrelenting ferocity. In some towns, more than an inch fell every 20 minutes. Streets became canals. Over 75,000 people were forced to evacuate, many boarding buses or trucks that lumbered through standing water. Schools were closed, factories shuttered, businesses abandoned. Entire districts looked like ghost towns, water lapping against storefront windows. Five, Hong Kong's second blow. Hong Kong, still reeling from the heaviest August rainfall in a century, braced itself for another strike. Podul delivered without mercy. Black rainstorm warnings flashed across every screen, trains ground to a halt, subway lines were suspended, and low-lying areas flooded once again. Residents stacked sandbags against their doors, their exhaustion evident. One storm had already drained their spirits, but Podul returned to finish what the last had started. Six, the collapse of transportation. Across southern China, the storm paralyzed mobility. More than 200 flights were cancelled, grounding travelers in crowded airports. High-speed rail lines shut down. Ferry services were suspended, ports sealed tight. For those in desperate need of evacuation or medical aid, the silence of stalled engines was as terrifying as the roar of the storm. Seven, hidden disasters, unseen but deadly. Beyond the visible chaos, Podul left behind subtler but equally deadly consequences. Sewage systems overflowed, spewing filth into floodwaters. Dead livestock floated through villages, contaminating drinking water supplies. Mosquitoes, breeding in the stagnant pools left behind, promised future outbreaks of dengue and malaria. For public health officials, the storm was not just a meteorological disaster but a looming medical crisis. Eight, psychological scars. Perhaps the most insidious disaster unfolded in people's minds. Parents comforted terrified children who asked when the monster would leave. Elderly survivors, remembering storms of decades past, admitted this was unlike anything they had endured before. It's not just the wind and rain, one villager whispered in a shelter, it's the waiting, the not knowing if your home will still be there when the sun rises. For many, Podul was not just a storm but a trauma carved into memory. Act 4, Humanity's Resistance. In the heart of the storm, rescue efforts were a race against death. Firefighters waded chest-deep through torrents, clutching children against their shoulders. Doctors pushed through howling winds to reach makeshift shelters, stitching wounds under flickering lanterns. Volunteers formed human chains in the flood, passing sandbags hand to hand as walls of water bore down on their towns. In Yunnan, days of rain triggered a landslide that swallowed an entire village in minutes. At least 4 were confirmed dead, dozens more missing. Survivors spoke in trembling voices, it happened too fast. We had no chance to run. In Hangzhou, gusts hurled 4 people, including a child, into the surging Qiantang River. By some miracle, they clung to a floating log long enough for rescuers to drag them back to shore. Schools, gyms, and government buildings transformed into shelters. Inside, families huddled together on mats, passing around bottles of water and scraps of bread. Strangers held hands in the dark, whispering words of reassurance, fighting back fear with fragile threads of hope. Act V, Ruins in the Wake. When the winds finally receded, the land revealed its scars. Broken infrastructure, highways and rail lines in Fujian lay in ruins. Guangdong's ports were deserted, its airports canceling over 400 flights in just 2 days. Hundreds of thousands of homes lost electricity, hospitals ran on faltering generators, water supplies barely clung to life. Even wind turbines, built to endure typhoons, stood mangled, their blades scattered like broken swords across the hills. Shattered agriculture, fields turned into lakes overnight. Rice paddies and orchards lay drowned. Farmers stood in silence, staring into the murky waters that had swallowed a year's worth of toil. Disconnected voices, remote villages vanished from the grid, their phone signals gone. Temporary mobile towers, fragile and humming, became lifelines connecting the stranded to the outside world. Act 6, Lingering Dangers. Experts warned the peril was far from over. The mountains, saturated and unstable, threatened to collapse again with even the lightest rain. Rivers, swollen to the brink, could burst their banks at any moment. Pools of stagnant water, crawling with insects, foreshadowed waves of disease. And far out in the Pacific, another tropical disturbance brewed. Its path was uncertain, but for the people of Fujian and Guangdong, one thing was sure: the next storm could already be on its way. Eventually, the clouds will scatter. Streets will be repaired. Homes will be rebuilt. But the memories of those nights will never leave. We'll never look at the sky the same way again, one survivor said. Clouds aren't just clouds anymore. Wind isn't just wind. They're threats waiting to return. Typhoon Podul left behind more than wreckage. It left a reminder carved into the collective memory. Humanity's struggle with nature has no finish line. Life will continue, fields will be tilled, children will grow, families will rebuild. But every time people lift their heads to the sky, a shadow of unease will linger, an awareness that peace is fragile, and storms are always waiting. Thank you for watching. If you found this report helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell, so you won't miss future disaster updates. Some visuals in this program are for illustration only and not from the actual scene. We'll see you in the next episode. Stay tuned, and most importantly, stay safe.